You are listening to Julia's Trucking Cafe News Hour. Welcome to Julia's Trucking Cafe Trucking News Hour. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so happy that you're here and that you want to listen to the trucking news. As always, I have lots of news to get to, so let's get right to it. In our top story, a $50,000 reward is offered for any tips on this ministry couple that was murdered at a truck stop. I'll be talking about that here in a little later in the show. But first, troopers make nearly 300 traffic stops during a 3-day Interstate 80 operation. Authorities in Utah seized hundreds of pounds of drugs and made dozens of arrests during a major enforcement earlier in the month of August. The operation took place between August 9th and 11th on Interstate 80 in Toole County, Utah, state and federal officials said during a Wednesday press conference. The operation is part of a larger federally funded drug enforcement detail called the Rocky Mountain High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Program. Officials said that the purpose of the enforcement effort was to, quote, provide a safe and secure environment for motorists on Interstate 80 through high-volume traffic enforcement and providing public safety services while identifying indicators of any crime, threat, or hazard to Utah citizens, and motorists legally investigate suspicious circumstances, end quote. During that 3-day operations, would you believe that troopers conducted 289 traffic stops and 52 people were arrested on misdemeanor charges? 17 others were arrested on felony charges. On top of everything else, they seized 556 pounds of marijuana, 37 pounds of THC edibles, 320 pounds of THC vape cartridges, and 2 handguns. Much of the seized marijuana came from a semi-truck, according to the release. U.S. Attorney John Huber said that semi-truck was full of drugs that, when stacked together, compares its size to a trooper's cruiser. The operation was conducted as a partnership between the Utah Highway Patrol, the Utah Department of Public Safety, and the Utah State Bureau of Investigation, and the U.S. Attorney's Office, headed up by John Huber in the District of Utah. And up next, feds urge safety changes after falling conduit killed a trucker in a Pennsylvania turnpike back in 2018. 2 years after the death of a truck driver in the Lehigh Tunnel on Pennsylvania Turnpike, the National Transportation Safety Board issued new safety recommendations. This happened August 20th. They issued 2 safety recommendations to the Federal Highway Administration based on their investigation of the death of a 70-year-old truck driver, Howard Sexton. Sexton was killed back in February 21st, 2018 in the tunnel after he struck a conduit hanging from the ceiling of the tunnel only by the electrical wires. Following that fatal crash, the National Transportation Safety Board and Federal Highway Administration investigators found, quote, corroded, fractured, and missing transverse conduit supports at multiple locations. So, layman's terms, the piping that goes along the roof of the tunnel, the brackets of the supports that hold up that conduit that runs along the ceiling of the tunnel, they were all rusted and corroded, and the conduit started to fall. The safety board ultimately determined that long-term corrosion on the support system that held the conduit to the ceiling was a probable cause of that accident. They also determined that the corrosion had been discovered in 2016, and the Turnpike Commission was in a process of hiring a contractor to replace the corroded straps. They also said that the commissioner should have acted more quickly to complete the necessary repairs to the tunnel to protect the safety of the motoring public. Yeah, why was it taking up 2 years to find a contractor before this accident happened and killed this truck driver? The safety recommendations based from the board, based on this investigation, call for that highway administration to contact tunnel owners with the details on the fatal Lehigh Tunnel crash to emphasize the importance of maintenance of non-structural elements above the roadways. They also call on them to update their tunnel operations, maintenance, inspection, and evaluation manual and their inspection training courses to emphasize locating corrosion in non-structural elements. Not just looking for cracks or anything, in other words, inside the tunnel, but looking for other pieces, parts that have been rusted and corroded due to weather and this type of thing. And in this next story, a brush fire sparked by a flaming semi-truck adds to the 1,000 Utah fires that ravaged over the season. Oops, sorry about that. A flaming semi-truck started a small brush fire that happened in Washington County around 5:45, and this was back August 21st. The semi-truck caught fire parked on the shoulder of Interstate 15, which ignited the nearby grass and broke apart the trailer, spilling a load of meat across the roadway. Luckily, firefighters were able to contain that brush fire to only 5 acres. That's still a lot. No injuries were reported, but the roadway was closed for cleanup. Officials say that the state of Utah has seen more than 1,000 fires already over this last summer. So yeah, that was quite a few brush fires, and it doesn't help when, trucks explode and this kind of thing, of course. Now to our top story. As I said, a $50,000 reward is offered for tips on the murder of this truck stop ministry couple. Thanks to a different podcast, news tips are coming in on a nearly decade-old unsolved murder case involving 2 prominent figures in the truck stop ministry scene. Back in July, true crime podcast Just the Tipsters examined the May 29, 2011 murders of Bill and Peggy Stevenson, both 74, in their home in Boone County, Kentucky. The Stevensons were well known in the Kentucky trucking community for their truckers' chapel service at a TA truck stop located in Florence, meant to give truckers who couldn't make it to church on Sunday a place to worship. The podcast featured an interview which led Detective Coy Cox, who revealed that the killer or killers staged the bodies after the murders, placing odd items from around the house near or on them. The Boone County Sheriff's Office says that after the podcast aired, they started receiving new tips on that case. Cox says that he believes that the case can be solved. The Stevenson family is offering a $50,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest. If you have any information on the murders, you are urged to contact the Boone County Sheriff's Office in Boone County, Kentucky. And in this story, truckers along with activists protest against opposing opinions outside a plant gate in response to a proposed bill. So you got the truckers and you got the activists both protesting. So this was reported back August 21st. 2 opposing groups organized their own protests outside of a pork plant in Ontario, Canada, in response to a proposed bill that could protect livestock haulers from further harassment. Animal rights activists and truck drivers alike set up shop outside of Fairman's Pork, advocating both for the rights of animals and for the rights of truck drivers. Back in June, a protest against the use of pigs for food led to the death of a protester after he got in the way of a tractor-trailer attempting to make a delivery at the plant. This tragedy led to the charges against the 28-year-old truck driver and an uptick in protests outside of the plant. On August 21st, pro-truck driver groups set up shop on one side and animal rights activists on the other, holding signs advising people to stay away from trucks and put safety first, along with Go Vegan for Regan, and this is about animals, not truckers. Both groups are gathered in response to the recent bill proposal of Ontario Security from Trespass and Protecting Food Safety Act. Once enacted, that legislation would prohibit stopping or interfering with motor vehicles transporting farm animals or interacting with the farm animals without explicit prior consent, like giving them water and this kind of thing. There are also several trespassing-related measures that focus on farms and processing facilities themselves. The protesters are harassing drivers and farmers alike, said a truck driver from TJ Medway farmer who was involved with that Thursday's protest. He said, quote, "This has been going on for 8 or 9 years now and should never have gone this far." Vice President and part of Brussels Transport, one of the largest livestock haulers in Ontario. "It's nice to finally see that our sides are being shared. The agriculture communities behind us and the truckers. Every driver that drives through here today finally sees some support on their side." He also continued that the activists for the pork were not respecting vehicle blind spots. When you're turned crooked in here, you can't see down the passenger side at all, and they don't respect that. Sometimes you'll be pulled in and turned cockeyed, and they'll be on your driver's side, so you can't see any of them either. "I'm all for protesting," he says, "but I don't believe that people should be on the road," said Christy Perrin, a truck driver who grew up on a pig farm. "When those hogs come in, they're calm and they're relaxed, but all the animal rights activists are doing and making them upset. The longer they're out on the road, the longer it takes for them to get into the barns where there's water and food." Animal rights activists argue that Bill 156 is part of the government's plot to hide the truth. And they're saying that it was a peaceful protest. Breaking and entering is always illegal, so there are already laws in place to protect private property and possessions. So I won't go on with any more of that. And in this story, Colorado is starting to collect tolls. This was reported August 21st. Tolling went into effect at the express lanes of C-470 in Colorado. It began around 12 and a half miles of the express lanes between Wadsworth Boulevard and I-25. The express lanes have been open since mid-June, but tolling has been waived as part of a testing phase. Drivers could still choose to use the general lanes for free or enjoy a faster, more reliable travel time in exchange for a toll. According to a toll fee schedule on the Colorado Department of Transportation website, truckers could wind up paying a lot more than they anticipated due to a $25 surcharge for vehicles with 4 or more axles. Toll fees are also varied depending on the time of day. The signage will provide drivers with additional information on how much they can expect to pay. Sorry for the background noise. It's chilly here in Illinois as I have some time to make another video. And as you see here, up next, more than 500 pounds of meth was hidden under a semi-trailer floorboards. This happened in Arizona. They recently seized hundreds of pounds of illegal drugs from a tractor trailer. The drug bust occurred over the weekend of August 18th and 19th in Port of Nogales. According to the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol Director of Field Operations, Guadalupe H. Ramirez, says that they seized 563 pounds of methamphetamine hidden within the floorboards of a tractor trailer. The estimated street value of the seized drugs are $563,000. And in this heartwarming story, a truck driver drove nearly 2,000 miles just to reunite a family with their beloved cat. An Iowa truck driver traveled nearly 2,000 miles just to reunite a family with their rescue earlier in August. When the Welters planned their move from Clear Lake, Iowa to Peachtree City, Georgia, they didn't expect to have to leave their cat, Franklin, behind. However, when it came time to make the move, Franklin was nowhere to be found. The family searched and searched the property, and before realizing that their cat had been spooked by the movers and wedged himself in a space just above the basement ceiling. Quote, "We did all we could aside from cutting a hole in the ceiling to get him out," said Matt Welter. The Welters were already behind schedule, so they had to get moving, but they came up with a plan. Have a neighbor set out a baited trap to catch Franklin and go from there. Sure enough, Franklin was caught within a few days, but now the Welters were faced with another problem. The $2,000 cost to ship the cat all the way to their new home in Georgia. And Mr. Welter said, well, we couldn't afford that. We love him dearly, but we just can't afford to that kind of money to have him shipped. So Franklin stayed with Grandma in Clear Lake as the Welters took to Facebook to find Franklin a new permanent home. Matt says he received several messages offering to take the cat, but was shocked when he received one from a truck driver, Travis Anderson, offering to deliver the cat to their new home himself. Anderson lives in Clear Lake, and though he didn't know the family, he knew he could help them reunite with their pet. Quote, they were in a bind and there was no way he'd get them back to him. He said, I didn't want to see it go to a shelter, and if worse came to worse, I was going to take the cat. So Anderson lined up a delivery to Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport in Texas, bringing him a bit closer to Georgia, and made plans to drop Franklin off with his family. We thought he was a member of extended family that was no longer going to be with us, Matt said. All our options had been exhausted, and then this happens. Anderson picked Franklin up from the Welters' home in Clear Lake, and the two set off on their 3-day, 1,850-mile adventure on August 9th. He was a good little boy, Anderson said, and he got to see quite a bit of country, more than most people get to see. He especially liked watching the airplanes take off from the airport. After the pair completed their delivery in Dallas, they headed for Knoxville, Tennessee, where Anderson met up with Matt to reunite the cat with his family. Matt says he was happy to make the nearly 4-hour drive after what Anderson did for them. Franklin and the Welters have since settled into their new home as a family. Through this situation, Mr. Welters said, I became a quick believer that there's a lot of good still out there. We thought everything was dark and the headlights of an 18-wheeler lit it up for us. So glad that Franklin got back home. Now here's a funny story for you. Yeah, you read right. Police say a nude psychiatric patient took a fuel tanker and crashed it into an Iowa home. This happened around 6:45 August 20th when a fuel tanker rolled over and plowed into a home in a residential area in Waterloo, Iowa. The person who crashed the home had been extricated by the Waterloo Fire Department. He was then taken to the hospital for treatment. A person who was inside the home when the crash occurred was unhurt. Due to a major fuel spill, an evacuation order was put into place by emergency management from the nearby homes. As the cleanup investigation continued, police were able to release new information about this bizarre events leading up to this crash. According to the local newspaper, police have been called to the Quick Trip fuel facility around 6:30 on Thursday morning after a person driving a vehicle crashed through the fence. A driver at the facility pulling a tanker full of fuel stopped to check on the person in the crashed vehicle. The man from the crashed vehicle then took off in the fuel tanker. And a different report from another news outlet describes the person as a psychiatric patient spotted running naked in a parking lot before taking the tanker. You heard right. Yet another local news outlet, a third one, reports that the man was also spotted nude behind the wheel and was pumping his fists as he drove. That he thinking he got away with something. Shortly before the crash into the house occurred, police were already looking for the tanker due to somebody driving naked. Police say that the man was at times driving at speeds of up to 70 miles an hour around town and swerving into oncoming traffic to avoid cars stopped at the intersection. While passing through that intersection, the tanker collided with a vehicle also in the same intersection, and this caused him to lose control, crash into at least 2 additional vehicles, and then into the home where he flipped it. So, man, oh man, you don't know what's out there anymore. And one lucky trucker wins the lottery. A lucky truck driver won $480,592 in North Carolina lottery back around the middle of August. He purchased a Cash 5 lottery ticket in North Carolina, and he told lottery officials that his wife didn't believe him when he told her they had won. I had to take my truck to the shop. I told her, if you let me drive your car to Raleigh, I'll pay it off for you, because she just bought a new car last year. She took off work and they rode down here with me. Tucker will take home $340,000 after taxes. He said he'll use the money to retire a little bit earlier. Congratulations to him. And police arrest a suspected I-5 shooter. Oregon State Police have arrested a man they believe is behind a string of shootings that took place on a busy interstate. They announced that they placed 49-year-old Kenneth Ayers under arrest in connection with a series of shootings that took place on I-5 back in May of this year. Ayers have been particularly connected to the August 19th shooting of a female driving on I-5 at around mile marker 37 in Jackson County, Oregon. Police believe that Ayers were involved in other shootings on I-5 occurring on May 12th, June 2nd, June 15th, and July 7th, also on July 9th. Troopers say that during the course of that investigation into the string of shootings, they began to suspect that a UPS truck was involved. Soon after the August 19th shooting, troopers were reportedly able to locate a UPS semi combination approximately 60 miles north of the shooting site. During that investigation, the truck driven by Ayers was seized and arranged for another truck to pick up the trailers he was hauling. Search warrant was applied for and served, and the search of the truck revealed a firearm consistent with the type used in the I-5 shootings. He was arrested and booked into the Jackson County Jail. He was also slapped with 29 different charges and is being held on $1 million bond. He was arrested on August 20th. Let me see. I'm skimming the article real quick to see what the charges were. They're mainly just going back over the charges are in connection with 7 interstate shootings, 1 charge of attempted murder, 1 charge of second-degree assault, 13 counts of reckless endangerment, 7 counts of second-degree criminal mischief, and 7 counts of unlawful use of a weapon. So, yeah, and I'm sure he's going to lose his CDL job and everything else. Does it pay? No. And in this story, do not try this at home. This happened in Australia. An Australian truck driver is facing harsh criticism after posting a video of himself sitting in the passenger seat of his moving semi-truck. Video was initially posted to a private Facebook group, but was then leaked to the public on August 22nd. It's hard enough in this industry for people like my father and others without people doing stupid crap like this, somebody said. In the clip, the unnamed driver is seen to be resting his feet on the dash while sitting in the passenger seat as the truck barrels down an empty stretch of road. Officials say that the truck was likely cruise control and suspect that the driver rigged a contraption from the dashboard holding the steering wheel in place. He's a bit shy, yeah, mate, but we're best 2-up team. Yeah, you're dead bloody right, the truck driver could be heard saying on the video to no one in the 50-second long video, seemingly making a joke about the skill set of his non-existent team member. Keeping it on the road nicely and steady, aren't you, buddy? The driver continues. We go good. We're going to drive all day and all night. All day and all night. Yeah, Riggsy? What do you reckon? Both members of the Facebook group and those who viewed the footage after it was leaked responded with outrage and disbelief over the driver's actions. It's not representative of the industry at all and is just mind-numbingly stupid, said executive officer of the South Australian Road Transportation Association, who claimed that the clip is the most absurd footage he's seen in all of his 26 years of trucking. So I'm not going to go on about that, but yeah, the stupid things that drivers do out here. And a more interesting story, if you park at this truck stops fuel island for too long, your truck's going to get booted. You're lucky you don't get towed. Are you fed up with drivers parking at the fuel island like I did a show about for excessive periods of time, doing their 30-minute break and everything else? Well, this truck stop is doing something about it. When you're on a tight load and you're up against the clock, every minute counts. The last thing you want to do is wait in line to fuel up while someone is sitting at the pump taking their 30-minute break. That's why many truck drivers are applauding Little America's efforts to curb fuel island parkers. Over the weekend in August, a new policy regarding trucks that are parked for too long at the fuel island. Someone posted that they had enough as well. These will put on your truck and you could take a mine to camp in the fuel island. Cost you $200 to have them removed. So, yeah, they're booting people. And they also have a sign. Non-fueling trucks parked at fuel pumps will be booted and fined $200. So they have a lot of comments about this and this kind of thing. It's about doggone time that somebody's doing something about it. And a Wisconsin woman who randomly stabbed a truck driver is sentenced to 40 years in an institution. I can't even begin to count. Ashlyn, her first name is, 19, had been found not guilty of attempted first-degree intentional homicide by reason of mental disease or defect for her role in a stabbing that nearly killed a truck driver. She was issued a 40-year sentence to institutional commitment. This happened, the stabbing occurred July 15th of 2019 in Muckwonago, Wisconsin, which I reported on. Police say that 59-year-old Illinois resident Jeffrey Gilbert had been driving a truck for Ace Hardware shortly before the stabbing occurred. As he was waiting for items to be unloaded from his truck, Gilbert went to North Star Shell gas station for a soda. He walked. That was when Ashlyn allegedly emerged from where she had been hiding in an aisle in the gas station and stabbed Gilbert in the chest with a 12-inch butcher knife without saying a word. She then stabbed him a second time in the hand. He was found in the gas station parking lot with a 4-inch stab wound in his chest, attempting to escape. He was taken to the hospital and survived. Officers arrived on scene. She was still holding the knife and her phone. Police later learned that she had walked 4 miles to the gas station carrying the knife with the intention of finding a woman to stab. She said that she chose Gilbert randomly because he entered the same aisle she was in. Yeah, she's kind of disturbed, you think? And finally, an old family cemetery has a new chance at life thanks to one truck company's good deed. A small family cemetery in Cutler, Illinois has been revitalized after a serious storm thanks to the help of a local trucking company willing to help out a neighbor. The Weisel Cemetery fell into disrepair after a serious storm blew over the several trees back on August 10th. June McDaniel, who cares for the cemetery, took over as caretaker of the lot after her father, Lawrence Moe, passed. Mr. Moe spent a good portion of his life fighting to maintain and protect the small cemetery where his grandparents and other relatives were buried, even striking up a deal with Captain Mining Company when they bought the land and intended to tear it up during the mining process. That's illegal. Now, after all these years and all that effort, 4 fallen trees were standing in between McDaniel and the upkeep of her family cemetery. McDaniel and her partner were too old to do the work themselves, so she started shopping around for prices and realized it was going to cost quite the pretty penny. That's when she decided to pay a visit to Southern Illinois Motor Express, who technically now owns the property the cemetery sits on. McDaniel went to Southern Illinois Motor Express and spoke to the owner, who told her he noticed the damage at the property bordering his parking lot and was willing to help to try to clean it up. I thought we could handle this, he said. So Mark and some of his employees cleared away the debris from the storm and even set some of the salvageable trees back into place. And with McDaniel voicing her appreciation all the while. She made it a bigger deal than it really was. The owner said, I'm not some sort of superhero. She's really the hero here. She's mowing and taking care of the cemetery all the time. What we did was little. We just helped it out. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you who tune in to listen to me each week here on the cafe. If you wouldn't mind, please subscribe using the link below, or on Cloud Hub, please subscribe at the top of the page. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. As I said, please, if you wouldn't mind, stop in if you're on Facebook and give us a like on Facebook. Also join our discussion group at Julia's Truckett Cafe Regulars. And if you wouldn't mind, subscribing to our newsletter at juliastruckettcafe.com/newsletter. So thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time. You have been listening to Julia's Truckett Cafe Truckin' News Hour. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Take care. Have a blessed day.